So, two-thirds of people in the UK feel left in the dark about the impact of post-Brexit deals. That's not a surprise considering that we're told about how great the UK-Japan deal is and these rollover deals, but we haven't actually been able to see the specifics of the UK-Japan deal. I think the only people who've managed to get parts of it are the ones who looked at it from the Japanese side, but obviously you have translation issues at that point, and that's incredibly difficult and expensive to do. Really, only the FT would be the ones who would bother doing something like that. So more than two-thirds of the UK public feel left in the dark about the impact that post-Brexit trade deals struck by the government will have, especially when you have the farmers and the NFU constantly complaining about how bad the trade deals are for farms, and you've got the government saying how great they are. When you have a 50-50 like that, sometimes doubts can come into people's minds. So Liz Truss has been tasked with establishing bespoke deals with worldwide allies after the UK regained the power to renegotiate its own trading terms by leaving the European Union last year. But while a host of rollover deals with countries has been secured, mirroring the terms that had initially been in place when a member of the European bloc, so all about the rollover deals, all this stuff, essentially mirroring the deals apart from the Japan deal, which is different. Also the fact that we still have to renegotiate the CETA deal as well. I think the Canadians are looking at that. And Australia have been signed. A survey has found that Britons feel the government has not been open about what the bilateral treaties entail because we can't actually debate. Parliament can't actually debate them until they're signed because those idiots in the Tory party signed away their right to criticise these deals before they're signed. So well done, 81-seat majority. Thanks. A survey of more than 3,000 people found that 67% felt the public received little to no information from ministers about trade deals, with only 7% recording they knew the UK had a deal in place with Japan. I mean, how the hell people don't know that is unreal considering how much Liz Truss talked about it. But again, she didn't talk about it that much considering that it's not as good as the deal the EU has with Japan. So I suppose it would make sense that they would talk about the deal to an extent, but definitely wouldn't talk about specifics and would just say, oh, we've got a deal with Japan. Like, so does the EU. Who cares? The EU one is better, though. Just letting you know. A quarter of consumers who took part in the poll conducted on behalf of consumer group Which said they felt the government was not at all open about the impact new trade deals would have, which is true. We haven't seen any impact assessments for most of the trade deals we've done. The only thing the UK government actually does is say, oh, if we were on WTO rules, this would be the circumstances. Well, we weren't on WTO rules with Japan. We had a trade deal. There was the EU-Japan deal. Same with Canada. So the points the government makes are just ridiculous. If you follow the sort of Department for International Trade Twitter page, you're just going to lose IQ points because it's full of rubbish, and people constantly call them out. They get ratioed fairly often, from what I remember. These figures were highest in Northern Ireland, which makes sense, where dissatisfaction amongst unionists over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which effectively keeps a part of the UK in the EU single market for goods to prevent a hard border, has been escalating since it came into force, considering they're told one thing by the government and then you find out, no, there is actually going to be a trade border and the government lied to you for the best part of 6 months. The majority of Northern Irish respondents said Boris Johnson's administration had not been forthcoming about what the trade deals meant for their nation, which is absolutely true given that trade with Northern Ireland has fallen significantly because of the border in the Irish Sea. Shocker. There were divulged fears elsewhere as well, with a third of consumers in Wales and 41 in Scotland recording they were not at all confident that the trade deal signed by Westminster would reflect the specific needs of their parts of the union, which again is true considering that Wales has struggled massively due to the drop in agricultural exports to the EU. Scotland has struggled, I think, down because whisky exports are down by a significant amount, and also the fact that these sort of areas, Wales and Scotland, aren't spoken to that much by the Westminster government. Normally they talk to England because that's where most of the Conservative Party seats are. So they don't really care about the other parts. A lot of Welsh farmers have complained that it's easier for people in France to import beef from New Zealand than it is from the UK, from Wales, even though Wales is way closer than New Zealand. But it's because New Zealand have an equivalency agreement with the EU and the UK doesn't. So it makes sense why the Welsh and the Scots would be so annoyed by this. Scottish fishermen would also fall in the same boat. They were constantly lied to by the British government. Critics have voiced concerns Meanwhile, there was a strong feeling that UK standards should be upheld in post-Brexit wrangling, which hasn't happened with the Australia deal by the looks of things. Critics had voiced their concerns that the free trade deal with Australia in June will see British farms undercut by food coming from Australia that does not meet the same standards as the UK, which is something the NFU have talked about a lot, but it doesn't get a ton of media coverage. Out of those surveyed, almost 9 in 10 felt all food imported should align with the UK domestic food standards. Now, unless that 10% think that imports should have a higher standard to sort of UK standards, what the hell are you guys thinking? Honestly. 5 in 4 consumers agreed that the UK government trade policy should not endorse signing deals that remove existing environmental protections, which makes sense, considering that the more trade you deal with countries further away, the more damage it does to the environment. While 63% thought it was important not to reduce data and digital protection in Concords, which is a very odd thing that people would feel so strongly about, but I suppose you're asked a question, you don't really, you don't say, I think it's really important that the UK protects data and digital protections. They'd ask you the question, do you think it's important? So I suppose that makes sense. The government must take the opportunity, so this is from another group, Sue Davies, the head of consumer rights and food policy at Which, I forgot to highlight that, so we'll just do that now. She said that the government must take this opportunity to communicate transparently and openly with the public about trade negotiations and push for a consumer chapter to be included in future details, which reflects the issues that are most important to consumers. I mean, they ain't going to do that. The only thing they can tell you is, oh yeah, our exports are going to go up because of this deal. And it's like, okay, what did the other country get? Like almost unlimited exports to us with lower standards? They ain't going to do that. Like, come on, dude, be real. Be real. Sorry, Sue Davies. Be real, man. Person. I'll get in trouble. I'm going to get cancelled for that comment. But yeah, be real. Which said a consumer chapter should cover key consumer priorities such as maintaining food, data and environmental and online shopping protections, and that more than 80% of survey correspondents supported this idea. So that's a good idea, having a bit where it's more simplified for the consumer, but what they'll do is probably just oversimplify it, and so the consumer won't get any benefit from it. And the other thing is we can't see these deals until I think they're signed, which is ridiculous. That's something which should be pushing for, to be honest. You've got Emily Thornberry saying this survey should be a wake-up call for Liz Truss. The people do not want her to undermine our food standards, selling out our farming communities and negotiating trade deals on our behalf without telling us what they mean, which is true, because that's what Liz Truss has done. We don't know the specifics of the Australia deal. The only way we're going to find out is when Australia pass it in Australia, and when they debate it over in Australia. We ain't going to find out from our parliament, which is shocking. Liz Truss, or the Department for International Trade, saying our climate change and environmental policies are some of the most ambitious in the world. So why are you getting rid of trade with our nearest neighbour and then increasing trade with a country that's, thousands of miles away? Why are you doing this? It's very expensive to export and import things from Australia because it's so far away. Transport has a cost, on the environment. So this statement here is just ridiculous. And we will not sign trade deals that compromise our high environmental protections, animal welfare and food safety standards. Well, they're not going to compromise our standards, really, but you're allowing lower standard products to come into the country. So you might be able to spin that one as telling the truth, but it's not the truth, is it? We both know that. So come on, Liz Truss. She's just embarrassing. But yeah, what we can see from this article is that the majority of people in Britain don't actually know what's going on in the trade deals, and some, the majority of people who are polled are very unhappy about this, but they're not going to do anything because Liz Truss told them the trade deals are phenomenal and the best ever. But the only time we'll realise they're not is when other countries are like, well, the deal is good, but it's not as good as the one we have with the EU. The same thing that happened with I think Norway said that, yeah, the deal with the UK is great, but it's not as great as the deal that Norway has with the EU. That's what's going to happen. But yeah, we're forcing to have, lower standards, which is going to cause more problems for our exports to the EU, which is great stuff, Liz. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.